Fausto Pugliese, president of Cyber Trading University.
Most people always focus on the past, where as a professional day trader, we just focus on the future. You can do very well in trading, and you don't have to have a good amount of movement for the stock to go up.
Welcome everybody back on another episode of the Cyber Traders. My name is Fausto Pugliese, and I have a new guest here for the first time. We got Kevin Bolt that's going to be here and talk a little about trading, a little bit about his markets and how he trades futures and stock market, what he sees, what's going on, and most importantly, the mistakes that he made, so you guys don't make the same mistakes also, because us as gurus and traders, we always want to see people succeed and not to fail. So Kevin, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Doing well, Foster. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, good. Pretty interesting. I was just talking to Kevin just before, and I didn't know he was in Kelowna, Canada. I mean, oh my God! I was just telling him that I was actually, one of my students invited me there. I think it was probably Kevin. Maybe it was a while. It was probably like 15 years ago. I would think. Time flies. Could have been longer than that. You know, I've been doing this for 35 years, and no one knew anything about, I don't know if anyone here knows anything about Kelowna, but Kelowna is very well known for their sea monster, right? You got that sea monster that they talk about. I don't know if you saw it, but and then their ice wine. And it was funny, I actually brought cases of ice wine back here to New York, and no one even knew what the hell this stuff was. And it all of a sudden went like viral in New York, and it was like, who brought this stuff? And I was like actually one of the ones who started it. But it's what a beautiful area. I mean, the castles that you got there, awesome. And just a great vacation spot.
Yeah, it's kind of like our Napa Valley of Canada in a way. We get this wild, like, 4 seasons where you get crazy snow and then crazy heat. You never really know what to expect.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, listen, it's not. How far is it from? How far was it from Banff? If I remember, you're not too far.
Well, you got to travel through the Rockies. It's about 5 hours to Lake Louise, and then I guess like another hour and a bit to Banff.
Down it. That's what I thought, because I remember, because I've been to Canada. I think 20% of our students in here are all Canadians, so we're all basically. I've been from Vancouver. Oh yeah, but I'll be doing a speaking up there in September. October. I'll be up in Toronto in October. But I love the West Coast. I mean, I think people like Vancouver. I've been to Whistler. Banff was pretty cool and stuff like that, but it was great. Taught a lot of classes. But anyway, with that said, let's talk about you. So tell me a little bit about you, Kevin. When did you get into the business of trading?
So I started day trading about 7 years ago or so, and kind of started Timothy Sykes, take some base hits. That's that whole thing. Okay, penny stocks is fun. What is this stuff? This stuff moves really crazy. I can make my day job if I actually get good at this in the matter of like half an hour or so. Oh wait, I can lose the same amount of money if I'm not on the ball. Okay, well maybe this isn't as easy as it looks. So I tried day trading stocks for a little while. Wasn't very good at it, and then I ended up making a switch to options. Like, okay, well, let's try something new. Let's see if we can figure this out. And I tried options for about a year, made a little bit of money, lost a little bit of money. And then one of the guys that I was trading with was trading futures at the time. And he said, well, why don't you trade, the actual futures contract instead? It's better leverage and CF better for you. So I started trading futures in February 2020. And anybody that remembers the early bit of 2020 was extremely volatile. That's when the market sold off about 35% in the span of a month or so. And I made 25 grand in my first 3 weeks on like a $2,000 account. So I thought, this is the best thing ever. I'm away I go, right? This stuff is for me. And the way I'm trading obviously works out better for futures. And then I lost all of that within about a month and a half when the market eventually started correcting itself and shorting everything didn't work out anymore. So switched to futures. Okay, well, if I'm going to make a run at this, I have to be a little bit more structured and maybe get a little bit more education out of that rather than just kind of like, oh, market's going up, so let's buy. The market's going down, let's sell. And that kind of led me to Al Brooks. So I started studying candlesticks. And then I started studying some order flow. All of a sudden, I became a jack of all trades, master of none. Still couldn't make it work until about 3 years ago or so, when I started piecing everything together, that I didn't actually need to be looking for the perfect trade, but I need to be managing my risk better. So that kind of really changed everything for me that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the big things I always tell everybody. I have a slogan I always go by. We don't teach you how to make money. We teach you how to stop losing it. That's everyone's biggest problem. And it's all about money management that people don't understand. There's there's a winner and there's a loser, in the market. And you find out that when are you selling? When the stock's going down. When you're buying when it's going up. You're not selling when the stock's going up, and you're not buying what's going down. That's what you have to understand when it comes to trading, and that comes with experience. And it's great to hear from you that you've been taking, you taste a little bit of everyone's, secret sauce and what they're trading. You understand a little bit more the different markets, and everyone has a different style. Some work for some of them, some don't. Some people, they take in my classes and they find out, they say, Fausto, your staff, everything, your support, unbelievable. I just don't get it, and that's okay. But the good thing is you can't do this on your own, right? You can't learn on your own. You can't sit there on YouTube all day and watch it all day. So with that said, when did you start turning the corner? How long did it take before you got there to start to realize? Because there are people that quit pretty quickly. They do it like you just said, like you hit big, which I think is like a big mistake, the biggest mistake. You don't want to, it's like, you don't want to win and like, oh, this is really easy, because that happened during COVID. A lot of people got into COVID when the market was rallying, and all of a sudden, like, it doesn't really work as good as I did before. So how long did it usually take?
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about trading is that you could start trading your first week, and I'm sure your listeners can relate to this, where everybody day, right? And away you go. And this is the best thing ever. You could also lose it, whatever, but you get that just enough, you win just enough that you want to keep doing it. And then all of a sudden you have to make a decision where, okay, if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, it becomes not a day in, day out thing where, okay, I made money today, I lost money tomorrow, maybe I'll make money tomorrow, who knows? It becomes, okay, how am I going to make money consistently? I'm going to be consistent week to week. And the decisions that I'm making right now, they're not going to lead to future. I'm getting the results right now. I'm being shown that, this isn't a consistent way of doing things long term, right? This might work great right now, but shifting that mindset, okay, if I'm going to be doing this for a year, now I've got to actually have some sort of systematic process, like, for example, like what you're teaching, right? Where it's, okay, it'll work today, but I've studied this way of trading. I've studied this system. The self-discovery is going to be something that I'm going to learn as I go on. You know what? Maybe I've got strengths and weaknesses that come into play. And then looking at it from, okay, can I make money any given month, right? Am I going to be break even? Am I going to be green? How exactly does that work? So for me, it was shifting it from not only the framing of the day-to-day of, what, I have to trade today, or I have to take this, or I have to do that. I get to do this. I get to study, and I get to learn. I get to have a epiphany of self-discovery today and work on that consistency. So definitely approaching it from more of like a long-term mindset than otherwise was the big turning point.
And regarding about your strategy, Kevin, what do you mean by candlestick personalities? I never really heard that term before and every day.
Yeah, I mean, we probably, if you look at a chart, and it's kind of like, okay, you know what, you've got somebody's got a girlfriend or a friend, and you go out drinking every Friday night, right? And this goes on, say, for 2 months. And then all of a sudden, one Friday night, they're like, you know what, I actually don't want to drink anymore. I think this is nonsense. Well, now something's changed, and there's going to be major results of that. So if you've got, say, a bearish trend, and every strong sell-off has some buying that comes in, and then every single candlestick of buying is strong, right? And then immediately after that say bull candle on the let's use the daily chart. So you have a strong bullish candle that comes up, and then immediately after that buying, there's a massive sell candle, right? As in, you're almost like the institutions are just waiting for any sort of rally, and they're going to sell it crazy. And then all of a sudden, that happens, say, 2 or 3 times, and then the next strong buying comes in, and the market attempts to sell off, but you have a very weak bearish candle that comes in. That to me is a change in personality. And you see this on higher time frames. Essentially, you're expecting something to happen, and something completely different has occurred. Right? So we're actually looking at it going, okay, you know what? We're gearing up for a reversal. How do they know that? Because the sell pressure is, or the buying pressure started to increase. So what I'm looking for is that attempt for the market to continue doing what it's doing and being very, very weak. And the candlesticks kind of depict that. And then all of a sudden, sure enough, that change in personality leads to movement or a reversal the other way.
Is that, Kevin, is that what you have a little bit to do? What you have your cornerstone education with, it's called what, the NLP or something like that? Could you explain that a little bit more, that how you apply up to your performance of the markets?
Yeah, so NLP is essentially the study of why we do what we do. It's the psychology. It's what really has changed a lot of trading, because we're perfect mirrors, and whatever we are as people, we bring to the trading desk. If we're extremely disciplined, maybe we're military or whatever, and we come to the trading desk, high likelihood that you're going to carry that into your trading. Not going to be willy-nilly, unless, of course, you're looking for the market to be an escape, right? In which case it becomes sort of like a gambling thing, where you're craving something outside of what's in your life. NLP, there's a couple of major things with NLP. Neuro-linguistic programming. So it's essentially how we view the world. And one thing with it is the concept of framing. So across the board, pretty much all successful traders, at least my experience, you will have them or losing money or blowing up an account, for example, when they'll look at it as feedback. You know what? Okay, way of not making a light bulb, but I know where I'm going. Mm-hmm. And their viewpoint of those losses is very, very different. Okay, I just learned something. This is feedback in my system. Maybe I'll do things a little bit differently next time, rather than somebody who's like, the market's against me, I'm not going to make ever. It's a very, very different internal representation. And one of the other ways that we kind of look at framing is, at least say in my experience, if your parents work a lot, money's very hard to come by when you're younger, and they have to work, say, 12 hours a day to make ends meet, and now all of a sudden you're making a lot of money in an hour, your internal representations think that that's a little bit crazy, because you've been taught your entire life that you need to make or work a lot to make a lot of money, and now you're working very little, making a lot of money. What's your framing, right? It's quite a bit different. So that's when things kind of go haywire, where we end up giving that back or sabotaging or whatever else that goes on.
It doesn't sound like a bad thing.
That sort of, right? It's like the anecdote or the metaphor that I use is that our life is a thermostat. And when things go wrong, right, when you lose a job, for example, and say that your life's typically at 80 degrees. Well, now your life's essentially at 60 degrees. So what happens? When you get a new job, you figure out ways to get that money going on, to get back to your comfort level. But it works in reverse as well. And all of a sudden you're doing this, that, or the other, getting your life on track, and your body goes, hey, we're not at 100, 105. Take the weekend off from going to the gym. We don't need to study today. We've been doing very well this week, right? We don't need to practice. We've got it right now. Let's not do anything. And all of a sudden we sort of cool off right back, right?
Well, you know what? I like how you put that and you explain that in those metaphors, because I use the same thing to people relate to it. And, you got to be paired, because a lot of it is psychology that does come with it. I think that's probably, I always tell everyone, that's like my biggest failure rate of teaching people. It's sometimes you get too cocky, or, you get too greedy. And a lot of it's psychological, when it comes to it. But that just comes with experience. And that's why you could use it towards any different type of markets. But getting back to, getting into this business, you're bringing up family, and you're talking about jobs and making big money in a short period of time. How did you find getting into the trading business again? Well, how did you like, being an entrepreneur, being a trader, we could do anything. How'd you fall into this business? What made you decide that I want to be a trader?
Well, it was the skill cap. So I love challenges. That's kind of my internal. I love playing soccer, and the skill cap and the ceiling. Okay, if I work really really hard, then my growth is sort of exponential. Whereas I was in accounting, and I could work really really hard and not sort of come out of that. I might get a good job or whatnot, right? But it wasn't directly anything, at least for the foreseeable future, maybe a few years later or whatever else. But in trading, I had direct control over that. If I worked really, then my earning potential was actually at a very high skill cap. So I love the challenge of it. And I'm not going to lie, there's a few times across the board where, I wanted to just, take a step back. And it was actually my wife, my lovely wife, that said, you know what, actually, you can be very, very good at this. Take the time you need, but like it's going to be there waiting for you, right? Like, do not give up on this sort of thing. So I had very, very lucky that I had the support system that was able to push me and keep into it. But it was essentially the challenge and the skill cap that really enticed me there with them.
That's great. You know what? Yeah, I know you talk about your family a lot too. You talk about you wanted to be more present with your wife and your daughter, and trading does help you live that vision. I think a lot of people here are starting to realize that too, especially after experiencing what happened with COVID, and a lot of these businesses had to start working from home and start realizing, what. It's just you want to spend more time with family. Listen, I love trading. Whenever I do my presentations, I always share my family. I have two families. I got my trading students out of my family during the day, and I got my students and my wife and kids. And I think I've been married. Actually, going to be I'm going to be married 27 years in 2 days, July 3rd.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot had to do with it also as being, having a job like this. So listen, we have a lot of students here too, our husband and wives too. They'll trade together. And I always get people that we say, I got to talk to my wife. I got to talk to my husband if I could do that. I'm like, listen, you know what? Maybe you should do it with him. You know what I mean? Because like you just said, it is a great job. It does pay a lot of money, but you got to know how to play the game. And it also helps with your relationship with your family too. Because listen, you could do this anywhere in the world, right? I mean, like, look where you are. You're in Kelowna. I'm over here in Long Island, New York. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to come to New York like it used to be our financial capital of the world. You can do this anywhere now, and you could take it with you. I mean, I have students that travel and taking their laptops. I mean, listen, you come in for an hour. It's not like you logged into work every day, right? So you're there every day.
Yeah, Starlink, you can just go across country. Why not?
So,
right?
Of course. I mean, why not? Right? You can even do it on your boat, right? Anywhere. Starlink's been a big help. Now, how did you get into the company you started? I mean, what made you start the company, your trading company?
So this was you've been married almost 27 years. Your wife gets smarter every year, don't they? And she's been like, why don't you teach people? Why don't you actually pass on some of this knowledge here? No, I'm not good enough. No, I'm not this. And she's just kind of sitting there going, okay, well, one day you will. And it was kind of almost thrust upon me at the time. So this was about a year and a bit ago now. And I was in this group of trading, and I ended up, I don't know how I ended up being in front of it where I was kind of just explaining market structure and whatnot. And there was enough interest in what I was talking about. People obviously really resonated with it. And then I just started this about candlestick personalities. And by the way, there's this about market objectives. And hey, all of a sudden, with all this sort of trading knowledge and strategy, now we started looking at, nobody in the business really approaches it from a psychological perspective, where we're kind of looking at the holistic self, whereas, the traditional way is, and, the strategy will work for some people. It won't work for some people, but obviously it's not the strategy, it's the person, right? Self-discovery. So this particular way of looking at it, I was kind of going, what if we approached it a little bit differently? What if we took the trader and said, teach how the market moves, and through that process of self-discovery, you're going to pick apart pieces that really resonate with you and your internal representations, And you might be an aggressive trader. You might look to trade reverse, trade continuations. You might want to be in at the bottom off of like a liquidity sweep, only to take that breakout trade, right? Everybody's got a bit of a different map, but we're going to approach it from sort of a holistic perspective, and we're going to break your limitations in the process. And we didn't really see that outside of, or at least in our, we decided, you know what, maybe there's a market for this. Maybe we'll see if we can make some people successful and give back a little bit. It's a long road. It was kind of almost thrust upon us, and here we are, and we're very, very blessed to have people that are around us in this area.
So teaching people, like, I mean, obviously helps you also be a very good trader yourself, because you see the physical challenges that people have. You know, when I was talking to people, like, some people just don't even know, you know, what the bid and offer is, you know, and you don't realize it. You know, they wanted to. So I had a student the other day ask me, like, when I buy a stock, where's the money go? And I'm like, well, what do you mean where the money goes? I mean, well, who when I buy, well, who am I buying it from? And do they mail me a certificate? Like, you know, like, and it's you know, it's a challenge, and you learn, and it brings you back to, like, my God, like, you never realize it. I'll tell you a funny story. Just last week, you know, I have a home living channel too. I love, like, gardening, chickens, cooking, all that stuff. And
Awesome.
one of the people asking me a question like, oh, I want to do chickens too, Faust. I see you got some great chicken videos, but I don't want a rooster. And I'm like, okay, you don't need a rooster. They're like, well, and very smart people. I mean, I'm talking about, like, you know, I'm not talking about somebody, they know that that's very, very educated, very wealthy people. They're like, yeah, but I don't want a rooster. I mean, how's a chicken going to lay an egg? You don't need a rooster for laying an egg. You know what I mean? They're like, really? I didn't know that. I'm like, and that's where it just shows you, like, in trading, it kind of shows you, like, this is why people fail. You know what I mean? They don't understand the basics of trading, and that's what makes you very, you know, why I always appreciate guys like you in this industry, and I want you people on my show, because the people that are listening right now, you know, and that are interested, that, you know, hear what you have to say, have to know what it's like, your challenges, because you learn something new, and then it brings you back to the basics. So with that said, what are the challenges that you find that people are making mistakes when they first got into it? When you start teaching someone, where's your basics that you have? They're like, oh my God, I thought this guy knew what he was doing. This trader knew what he was doing. What do you find that people's been their biggest challenges?
I think the biggest challenge, it's almost like our environment as a society too, where we have that next dopamine hit at our fingertips with phones, with social media, with, you know, all kinds of content that we consume, all the, you know, bright lights everywhere. So what ends up happening in trading is we're constantly looking for, you know, people that get into trading, the first thing they want is that excitement factor, right? That dopamine hit. Okay, so how do I attack the market? How do I enter here? The market's going up. I want to enter. How do I get involved? And this tends to be around entry, right? How do I enter the market? And from that, and that to me is it's kind of like our fourth stage, right? We want to know if the market's trending or ranging. So I almost have to, my challenge is to slow them down to understand how the market moves first. And then the entries will kind of present themselves and speak for themselves. You as a vet trader know probably the best the ones where you'd be silly to not take this. It's almost screaming at you to take it based off of your expertise and your system, right?
Right.
So rather than sort of approach it from like, okay, I want to be on chapter 4. No. We got to slow down and actually look at chapter 1 here.
Right.
Chapter 1 and 2 and go from there. Right. So, okay, the entry will be fun. It'll come afterwards, but let's actually focus on why the market first. And then all of a sudden, not only can they find out how to enter the market, but they also know where they're wrong. So we're really kind of educating them on that risk management as well, where, you know what, I'm involved here, but I'm expecting X to happen and Y is happening. So now I'm not involved anymore, right? I'm not letting it sort of run down and getting into the, well, you know, do I hold to my stop or all the emotional issues, right? We know what our exit strategy is first because we know how the market's moving. So sort of switching that framing for them, that was sort of the big challenge, because for me, when I was studying so much, now all of a sudden I have to put this together, and kind of coming back to what you were talking about, now I have to explain it to somebody and I have to treat them as if they have no idea what the market's doing. as in they don't really know how to get involved or anything. So now I'm really going back to basics, which helps me as a trader, because now I'm almost going, you know what, I see exactly where I was with this person. You know, this was me a few years ago. Okay, well, that's a little humbling, isn't it? Right? You know, so it's really rewarding in that aspect, because you realize how far you've come as well, which is pretty cool.
So regarding about the mistakes that people make as a beginner, how do you, if somebody wanted to get into the business and start off, like, what would you tell them? Like, got to open a brokerage firm, start trading on your own, you know, what amount of shares, like how do you break somebody in to break the ice with them?
So I think, I mean, especially when, you know, I haven't been trading for nearly as long. I think in the futures industry, I can speak for, I don't know if there's prop and whatnot that have caught up in the day trading part of it, but the ability to sort of to get involved now when you're looking at a strategy, and yes, there's emotional stuff that comes in. If you're paper trading, you don't get that, right? But in the futures, you can get $50,000 account, about $2,500 of drawdown that they give you for an evaluation test, but you can get that for $30, right? So the barrier to enter less than even when I started trading, where, you know what, I got to come up with $2,000 to be able to even try penny stocks, and then hopefully scale that up. Now you can essentially have $2,500 of liquidity for $30, and then test out your system. So that $30 a month is giving you a sim account, it's giving you real-time market data in the futures industry, and you're able to actually see how the market moves in real time. And that's really important, because we can look at back testing, and everybody is a flawless trader in hindsight. But being able to forward test that strategy and actually go, wow, you know, I'm involved, but the market just retraced 50% in like 30 seconds, right? Because they do that. They're there to get your emotions going. They're the best in the world at it. So actually holding to your system and, okay, you know what, is my trade still invalid? No, that's only something that can happen in real time and forward testing your system. And the barrier to entry with that's really low now.
But, you know, Kevin, I always hear people say, like, futures trading is the most risky. You know, people get themselves, and I know one of the reasons why I tell everyone it's no difference in Forex, you get a lot of leverage. See, like when you day trade stocks, I mean, the most you can get is 2 times. You know, you basically it's margin we're talking about here. So you get 2 times margin. If you day trade, you can get 4 times over the course of the day, as long as you're out. What is futures? Futures is almost like 10, 25 times or something like that.
I think it's 50 actually.
50. Okay.
I think it's 50.
So you're doing 50 times. Right. So use simple math. If you open an account with $1,000, you can do $50,000 you could buy. Okay. So in stocks, if you have 50,000, you only could spend, margin will be almost 100, you know, and then I don't know how they work it with margin calls or whatever, or red calls on futures. So do they really need 50 times buying power?
Yes. So they kind of realized that a little while ago too, and they came out with these micro contracts as well. So every 10 points. So the average candle, I think, is about 30 points on NASDAQ, the opening candle, right? So we're talking $600 top to bottom in the first minute, right? So that's pretty crazy if you're trading a mini contract, especially if you've got a small account. So the micros are actually 1/10 of that. So you can actually have, you know, say 2 micros in a position, and because of the way NASDAQ moves, in reality, if you're holding 50, 60 points of drawdown, then you need a new strategy. So even with 2 micros on 50 points, I think that ends up being $200. Okay. So a fair stop. And then, you know, if you're trading anything more than that when you're starting out, it's similar to, okay, I've opened up an account with $5,000 and I'm going to risk $2,500 on a penny stock, 1 trade, right? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. You know, you're kind of going for that. So those that are really starting out, yes, it is riskier, but the market actually doesn't have like penny stocks you'll see, or even, Nvidia or the bigger periods as well, but it doesn't move that much that quickly. In periods, there's expansion, and you learn really, really quick when to not trade. But based off of your strategy, you can size down to the point where the risk is less.
But my thing, this is my thing. I could never figure out futures. How do you know what futures contract to trade today? You know what I mean? Like when I teach my students, like the way we work is we just work off the big percentage gainers, whatever moves, because everybody's like, oh, well, what's Tesla doing today? Oh, what's Netscape? What's Nvidia doing today? Sometimes they don't move. You know what I mean? They don't do anything. Then we have a stock. What was the one we traded the other day? Today it was yesterday. BMNR, I think it was up like 550%. Be like, how'd you find that stock? It's a big percentage gainers, or maybe the AI stocks are moving, whatever it may be. So, I mean, in the futures market, what do you have? You have oils, you got metals, right? You have futures. How do you know which industry to jump in and what's moving, what's not?
So that's one of the biggest benefits actually to trading futures. I only trade the NQ. Every day, pretty much, there will be a handful of setups that occur. Right now, I'm usually done before 11 o'clock in the morning. So the way that the CME works is that their biggest revenue stream is commission. That they like to hunt for stops. The market's always trading to somewhere. It's not going up to somewhere specific. It's not going down to. It's not going up to somewhere random or down to somewhere random. It's always going some based off of price action. We can usually say, okay, the market's trading down to somewhere in this relative area of interest, and then we're going to get a move, and it might only revert back to the mean, which happens 70% of the time, or it might continue on that way. So each different one. So if you have, say, the big 4 or 5, I should say, where you've got the ES, the S&P, you've got NASDAQ, you've got the Dow Jones, you've got gold, and you've got oil. You can probably watch all 5 of them or whatever. But the reality is that if you focus on one, they all have their own kind of different personality, and you can find a way of trading with those by themselves, right? So you don't actually have to flip back and forth. You don't need a screener or whatnot. There's usually some sort of mean reversion strategy or some sort of continuation strategy that happens every day.
And what is the average goal that people should be making in futures? I mean, what is like when someone opens an account? Like, what do you recommend them to start off with, and what should be the yearly goal to make?
Well, that's because it's so leveraged that the consistency factor comes in. I think that with the prop industry as it is as of today, you can get, say, if I take a particular prop firm like Elite Trader Funding, who I'm actually partnered with them. They have a phenomenal team, but you can have 20 accounts with these guys. So what that means is you start one, you trade it well enough to pass, you then get, essentially they've said, okay, now you've proven your worth, you're going to be funded, and you're going to start earning payouts. So now all of a sudden that $33 of your evaluation test, you can do that times 20, right? And now all of a sudden you're getting a payout every 10 days from them, 40 grand every 2 weeks, just trading essentially one account being $200 a day, right? To that makes the earning potential crazy. The high leverage helps, but if you're sizing down and you're just going for those base hits, the earning potential is quite crazy with the prop industry how it is right now. 4% end up passing, so it's it's relatively more dangerous if you, right, because now it's essentially like that roulette wheel.
Well, why do I have to open up a proprietary trading account when I can just do it myself? What do I need them for? Just out of curiosity.
If you funded your own account of $2.5 grand, that's $2.5 grand of your own money. If you fund a trading account with a prop firm, you're paying $33 for the account, let's say, or $50 or whatever the prop firm that you choose is, and you're getting access to that 2.5 grand. So the barrier to entry is quite a bit lower. They take care of the data. They essentially, you have the trade-off is that there's rules, right? You can only have so many contracts. They're not going to let you go crazy with leverage or whatnot, hoping to have a windfall or something like that. But the big capital, and if you lose the account, so say you don't trade well or you're just learning, you pay that $33, 2.5 grand before I made 3. You're not losing 2.5 grand of your own money. You're losing $33 or $50 or whatever the case.
So Kevin, this is the only thing I understand. I used to do prop trading 30 years ago. Okay. I had to start as a prop trader. I know a lot more people in the prop trading, more in the future side of it. Now you can't do it in its equities because you got to be licensed, everything else. I don't think it's the same thing. Why would I give somebody a prop firm and give somebody $2,500 to trade to lose my money? Like, how do I police that from not losing it? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's what people have to understand, because people get these out there. They get very, they question, like, how do you make money? You know what I mean? And why you're not doing because you like me? You know what I mean? You do because you want to make money, right? So, I mean, that's the only thing that people always ask me, because they always come up. They're like, let me try this prop trading, whatever it is, and stuff like that. And I know how it works, but I don't understand how it works in futures.
Right. So the prop trading model is actually quite ingenious. They make very, very good and successful because they get 10% of them.
Okay.
For example, let's take an account that I ran up earlier this year, 25 grand, right? You take that payout, they move you to what's called live, and essentially you're actually a live trader, and you take say a $10,000 payout. So they make $1,000 off of you trading times however many traders they've got, and you take home the rest. So very attractive trader, very good for them. Vast majority. So I would say 4 out of every 100 traders that pay $50, let's say, they'll pass their evaluation. The rest of them are paying $50 to the prop firm, and the prop firm has no risk with them. So they collect that $50 times whatever. So what is that, 5 grand out of that, right? And then somebody gets, pass, and those 4 traders now will have to do the exact same thing to earn a payout, right? So from the prop side of things, they make money whether you win or lose. They're quite happy, right? From the trader's perspective, we have to trade well enough. Our barrier to entry is low, where we're not paying 2 grand or $2,500 into the market to lose. Worst case scenarios, we're down $50, right? So very, 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 very attractive for the trader. But the goal is to be able to trade consistently, to be able to have the scaling potential. And that's really where the prop space excels. They give you that potential of earning $80,000 a month without paying a crazy amount of money up front, right? So it kind of gives you that sort of scalability factor of kind of scaling accounts that way.
Okay. I just, in the equities part about it, I was just, if anyone here knows what ECNs are, the electronic communication network, like NASDAQ or BATS, whatever. I just know, like, a lot of these firms, like on the equity side, I'm not saying they do it in futures, they take the opposite side, like online brokers. That's how they make their money. Like I tell everybody, like, you ever ask an online broker why they give you free tickets? Because they like you. You know what I mean? Like, how do they actually make money? They make money on the spread. They take the bet, and what happens, they reverse the charge. So what happens is, like, they'll buy this, they'll say they bought the stock, but if it goes against them, then they'll go to then they'll force out of it and buy it in the market. That's why it's another thing why you want to look at direct access when you're trading, and you could see it, but on the future side, I know it's a little bit easier. And also in equities, you got to be licensed to do it. Like you say, take 10, they take 50% from me. That was the reason why I got into the education business. I'm like, well, I was a good trader. I'm like, why am I splitting the profits with you? I could just do it myself. But one thing I learned is that you can't really do it yourself. You still got to be, you have still to be part of a team, and you got to train people to trade like you, because when you're on your own, it's not the same. So that's what you're paying for, the camaraderie, the education, the support, all that stuff, the tools, like you said, all that stuff. But Kevin, with that said, let me just post up the link up there for some of you here. If anybody wants to know more about and get a hold of Kevin, we're going to do an event with him. There's a QR code right there on the top screen right there. Just take your phone and scan it, and we'll get you his website. And also, we're going to have him come back and do another, a training course, a little bit more about how it works and everything like that. And then I'll also put it on the email, on the actual chat right there of your website. So, Kevin, any last minute words you could probably leave off, or write any recommendations that people could learn a little bit more about, what they should be doing and not be doing in these markets, what you've learned, so they don't make those mistakes?
Yeah, I think that as we grow as traders, there's a couple of different things. And the first one is definitely getting into your mental rehearsal and your habits, right? Where you're kind of reinventing yourself, because trading is a self-discovery thing, right? And if we really quiet our minds and kind of look at the trades we're taking, usually what ends up happening is you'll find that there's always something that really speaks aloud, right? There's always something where this is actually really impeding my progress as a trader. Maybe I'm taking this trade havoc on my system, or what, this isn't really working out so well, or this one well, and I should do more of that. There's usually something to grow. And I think that if we come and sort of really do the work that the majority of traders aren't really willing to do, that it'll be kind of crazy what insights come out of that.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that, and thanks everyone for being here, Kevin. That was a great interview. I'm so happy. By the way, for everyone here, we'll make some shorts out of this. We're going to have this up later on today. Just make sure you subscribe to the channel, ring that bell, and make sure you leave a comment. And like I said, if you have anything, you're more than happy to email us. Kevin will be happy to get back to you. Just scan that QR code, or just click on that link and learn more about it, about Kevin's product, and learn a little bit more about the futures and his prop trading. Thanks, Kevin, for being here. Appreciate it, and have fun in Kelowna. I hope to meet you one day up there again. I loved it up there.
Thanks so much for having me, Fausto. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Definitely. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week for another